What if I said to you that you could rewire your mind in order to design and create the life that you want, getting the results in your life that you want, rather than just having to deal with the overwhelm that's the part of every day and making do? A lot of people are familiar with these concepts now, but I really want to, in this video, spell out some practical ways that this can be done. I've been a coach for 15 years. I've been doing personal development deeply for 30 years. And PSYCH-K is something I'm going to explain in this video, which is really the most effective and fast tool that I've found to be able to help to rewire that brain, and actually bringing in a number of different elements that can really make it fun and fast to be able to actually make changes in our lives, create new habits, release stress. And actually, I'm very much focused on this idea of, how do you get results, and how can I help people to get results in their lives where they feel more and more confident about their ability to set goals and then achieve them, and know that if they've achieved X, then they can achieve Y, and potentially get the goals becoming bigger and bigger as time progresses. Well, Psyche is what I'm going to explain in this video. Let's put it into some context. Just imagine, for example, you're with a bunch of friends, and one of them is called Bob. And imagine that somebody in the group says to Bob, "Oh, Bob, you're so much like your dad. It's unbelievable. I saw him the other day. You're just like him." Of course, Bob may not take that so well, and he might say, "No, I'm not. I'm nothing like him, or I'm not as much as him, like you might think." And of course, the group of friends will all start laughing, because they'll all start nodding at the friend who brought it up and start saying, "Yeah, he is just like his dad." And of course, Bob doesn't see it in the same way as the group of friends might. Now imagine that each person in that group is actually a bit like Bob. If they had been on the receiving end of that, they'd probably also push back a bit on saying, "No, I'm just," when people say you're turning into your parent, we're not so comfortable with that idea. As much as we love our parents, we don't want to become carbon copies of them. Now, what's that all rooted in? Well, let's break down the mind to an extent. We have two key parts of the mind. One is, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with these terms, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is creative, it thinks, it's kind of in the front of our mind when we're having those conversations. I'm using my conscious mind to a large extent right now. And it processes information at about 40 pieces of information per second. The subconscious mind, on the other hand, is what drives our behavior. It's the more hidden part of us. It's controlling a lot of stuff, like, for example, if someone's driving, how do they manage to have a conversation and drive at the same time? Well, partly the subconscious is involved with that. Muscles are moving, it becomes familiar, it loves routine, and it actually lives in the present moment. But it's something that is very much controlling our behavior during an average day. 95% of our day is very much controlled by our subconscious. And the subconscious, as opposed to the conscious mind being able to process 40 bits of information per second, can process up to 40 million bits of information per second. So it's much more powerful. And this is why, we have these situations where we would all like to maybe stop doing a particular behavior, or to start doing something differently to get certain results in our life. And somehow we find that, we might want to change our mind, but the mind has a mind of its own. So one of the things to consider with this is, and I think this is one of the big things that a lot of personal development teachings have traditionally kind of missed in a practical way to enable people to get results, is, how do we really go into that subconscious and rewire the mind? How do we even know what's going on in the subconscious mind? Because it's an invisible, hidden part of the mind, right? So one of the other things to bear in mind is that our subconscious gets programmed. Particularly, it's like a computer. A lot of you will know that I've worked in technology most of my career, 30 years, and we are like biological computers. The back of the mind, the subconscious mind, can be and is programmed. So our first 7 years of our lives, we are programmed in a theta state. So we're like sponges. Everything we hear from teachers, from parents, from the outside world, we just don't particularly have any filters. We just start absorbing that as the reality. And then, of course, once we've got that programming, we then go out to receive more evidence to back up what we believe is the way the world works. So that compounds and expands and kind of, becomes more reinforced as we get older and older, and we keep bringing in new beliefs based on our results and activity. So what do we do about that? Well, we can reprogram our thoughts. That has then an impact on being able to create new habits, create new behaviors, and then create new results. Within PSYCH-K, to break down the few elements that are involved with this, one of the things which is part of the name actually is K. K stands for kinesiology. So if you imagine you want to access your subconscious and get a sense, for example, I don't know, like let's say a particular statement, a belief, right? Apparently most people get a negative response from their subconscious to the phrase, I am loved or I am lovable. Now, perhaps humanity is in a bit of a mess because most people don't actually feel at a deep subconscious level that they are lovable and that they're loved. But what we do with kinesiology and with muscle testing, which is one of the elements that PSYCH-K uses, is that we actually use that to be able to get a strong or a weak signal from the subconscious to be able to know if the subconscious agrees with a statement or not. So this can be done remotely. I've recently been learning how to facilitate PSYCH-K remotely, which opens up obviously a lot more opportunity than done face to face, but it can easily be done either way. What happens is the muscles are also controlled by the subconscious, so it's a great way to be able to start the ball rolling by actually knowing, okay, if there's a particular statement, is the subconscious behind that statement? If it isn't, we then get the ability to actually take the mind into what's known as a whole brain state. Whole brain basically means that it's balancing the left and the right hand sides of the brain. So we obviously know uh, one side of the brain is very much more creative, it's intuitive. The other side of the brain is much more rational and analytical. And many's the time where people are a bit more balanced towards one than the other. By getting the brain into a particular whole brain state, this is something that's been scientifically measured within the PSYCH-K process. We're able then to get into a balanced state where actually the ground is fertile for being able to then reprogram the state. One of the other elements that PSYCH-K enables is it's creating a very collaborative space. There's an ancient practice called e-sumatak, and anybody who gets trained to be a facilitator becomes aware of this process, which is very much, like I said, it's the word collaborative. We're facilitating a process. We're certainly not doing something to somebody else. It's something where obviously the person who is bringing their life and their situation and circumstances to the table is working side by side with the facilitator. And within that space, it's an amazing back and forth really that happens, partly as a conversation, but it typically revolves around two key questions. One is how are things currently, and how would you like them to be? So it's a very empowering process. Often people will potentially get swallowed up by their problems and want to analyze and potentially overanalyze a problem and understand every minute detail. And maybe in the old days when I used to do coaching, it would always be, okay, what's the core belief that's driving all of this? Now, if we focus on actually how things are and how you want them to be, then suddenly we get more of a kind of environment of what's the empowering thing that you just want to happen? And you actually stop focusing on the problem and start thinking about the solution. And while moving towards what we would call a goal statement, which is a short, meaningful phrase, something that we've identified through that conversation that's empowering and actually creates the life that one wants, we're able to then basically take that, refine it, and then through a process called balancing and going into this whole brain state, we actually reprogram that into the subconscious mind. So it becomes something that then we're able to, and also through the process, we always get permissions. We're actually, for those who can handle another layer into this complexity, we're working on a conscious level, a subconscious level, and we're also bringing in the superconscious. Now, the superconscious is a bit of a grand, starting to get into the realms of jargon. I know a lot of you out there will be comfortable with that kind of term, you could think of it as one's intuition, higher self, expanded consciousness, higher element of oneself. Tony, was it Steve Jobs always used to talk about have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know who you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. What he meant by heart and intuition is also this kind of super conscious. If you often think about, that helicopter view, if you imagined in your life right now, you've got what's going on for you right now as you're listening to this. You've also got that helicopter view that you could zoom out, and that view is so high up that you can look at your life from birth to, maybe even the end of it. Certainly your vision of where you feel you want to head, where you intuitively feel you're guiding yourself towards or being guided towards. And then, your superconscious knows where you're heading if you trust it, your heart and intuition, in Steve Jobs' phrase. So by being able to trust that there's a collaborative space for all these answers to be revealed when working with someone, I'm very much, working there shoulder to shoulder. We work together in the process. It's just amazing how sort of solutions appear through that conversation. And I think this is one of the things when I talk to people that makes PSYCH-K something that's a bit different. Yes, there are other ways of reprogramming the mind. Hypnosis is one. Hypnotherapy, I've used that. It's great, but I think when you want to customize and personalize these things and make it really bespoke to what you want to achieve, this is where it comes into its own. And you can very quickly do what we call a balance, which means that we reprogram that in, and then you take an action step to just kind of reinforce your new habit, your new way of doing things. And by doing this on some really meaningful goal statements, you'd be amazed at what potential for unlocking brain capacity, because the idea, as we know a lot, is also that our thoughts are really creating our reality. So when we start on a subconscious level, feeling confident around certain beliefs, it's amazing what kind of synchronicities and actual circumstances happen in our life where we discover something, we get an instant piece of inspiration, a download, we meet someone. Life, I've been living this now for many years. When I first went on the PSYCH-K workshop, and I did so many of these balances and changes, that my life has become a steady flow of constant, synchronicity, basically, and a lot of it situations happening where they move me towards each goal that I particularly set. So along the way, also, just to mark it out, we do always get permission from the subconscious and the superconscious to proceed at any level. We also get verifications that any element of the process has been completed. And so that is another thing that marks out PSYCH-K. Just another example of how this has made a difference in my life, just to make it a bit more practical for you in how this could relate to you. Imagine a phrase and an affirmation like "I am safe." A lot of us would, want obviously a life where we feel safe. I know a lot of people, when they're making decisions about whether to make a career change, to really go for it in life or whatever, does the subconscious, your subconscious, believe that you are safe? I know I realized actually by teasing out certain goal statements that I suddenly came to the realization that my subconscious was not behind the phrase "I am safe." Now, you imagine a career actually where there was a certain level of safety that I didn't feel I had. It's one of the reasons why I've had a parallel career and I've done things in a certain way. Well, when I reprogrammed that, things have changed, and I'm very much now in a situation where I'm only working on projects that I'm really passionate about. I've got a great balance of different projects that I put my time behind, and they're really flowing. So there's great transformation that can come from this. And to come back to what I said at the beginning of the video, it's really about giving you the tools to design and then create a life that you want, and you can do this on a very tactical level. There could be a particular issue that you want to work on. My focus as a coach these days is very much around helping people to conquer overwhelm. I know that people generally have a bit of a thing of too much to do in too little time, not enough energy, also energy flags. at certain points in the day. So I'm really working with entrepreneurs to help them conquer overwhelm and then also supercharge their startup in terms of, I've worked in the realm of startups for many, many years now, and I tend to, click with a lot of entrepreneurs who want to, I've got a background in growing startups as well. So I feel that I'm drawn very much to working with entrepreneurs to tackle those things, conquer overwhelm. But really, at a fundamental level, it's about getting really clear, a clear space to think, to get more done, to get more, because we can play with things like time and energy. There is not a finite amount of time if you're able to actually create circumstances in your life which mean that the right things come to you, the right opportunities come to you, you feel fresh and you're energized and you're in flow state, you can get a lot done. I mean, I recently, to give you another example, I had a situation where I did a particular balance, one of these rewiring the mind, and the next morning I had about 3 downloads of information that would enable me to create a whole web page of content. I had it written, rough draft before I even had my breakfast, because as I woke up, I literally could feel a flow of information coming, and I literally had to just go and get a pen and paper and write it all down. It was stuff that, I'm familiar with, but in the old days, years ago, I would have taken a lot longer. Imagine how many I mean, obviously we've got AI to support us these days, but the amount of time it takes for creative work where we're looking at, for example, creating a whole web page of content. When that comes through and it's downloaded very, very quickly, then the time is spent on only refining it, but the order and the structure is already there. So I hope this has been useful and interesting and inspiring, I hope. If you want to find out more, I am very happy to obviously talk to you. The traditional way of doing that is setting up a 15-minute discovery call where we can go into a bit more detail about your own situation and work out if PSYCH-K might be the right thing for you. It's only one tool in my kit bag, but I've found that it's at the heart of the work I'm doing now as a coach, because it's so fast and effective. I also mentor startups, and that's more about giving advice, but I'm very much about, sort of empowerment now and helping people to really find their own answers and to design and create the lives they want. And it's incredible when you start to set these goals and watch yourself achieve them. It really is like unbelievable, because then you start wanting to, obviously do more and more with that. So find me on the link that will set up the call, and wish you well. I'll be making lots more videos, so there'll be lots of tips, and keep up to date with the Join the Dots Startups Network YouTube channel. All the best. Take care. See ya.